Last May, my husband and I were lucky enough to go and visit Garner State Park. When we went to get a trail map from the visitor center, the little man behind the counter told us we just had to hike up Old Baldy. He told us about an old park tradition of taking a rock from the bottom of the hill and carrying it all the way up the trail to put it at the top of the hill. Did you see here? I thought it was going to be a little bitty rock mountain thing, but it was not. There was a lot of rock. Well, halfway up, we had a few choice words for him. We were out of breath, we were tired. We wanted to turn back around and kind of tell him a couple of those in person, but we didn't. We kept going. We were absolutely lucky that we went ahead and finished. It was breathtaking and beautiful. Well, Texas alone is home to 51 state parks and 16 national parks and or forests. Many of you have probably actually been to a few. I know my family and I love to go camping at either state parks or national parks. Most of our vacations, you can find us at one or the other. Last year I took a government class, and I was able to learn about how much these national state parks actually benefit our country. They benefit us through our economy, our communities, and our environments. Let's take a look at how our economy benefits. National parks are a great resource for American economic growth. An article posted by the National Parks Association titled National Parks Boost the Economy, they credit $10.3 billion in revenue in 2005 alone. But aside from just that revenue, they are also responsible for over 230,000 jobs. Now that seems like a lot of jobs for just national parks, but when you think about it, Big Bend itself is over 800,000 acres of untouched land, as stated in S.C. Gwynn's article, Conversations with a Grasshopper. With area that large and that untouched, you can't just let people go and say, well, have fun, try not to get eaten, don't fall off a cliff. You need people there to police the area, to run it. They even have people that go on the hikes beforehand to make sure that it's safe. There's no areas that are flooded. There's no areas that are going to collapse soon. So they have to have people there to keep the tourists safe. But while the tourists help our American economy grow as a whole by visiting the parks, they also help benefit the local communities. There's only so long you can spend time in a tent or out in the wilderness without going a little crazy. Eventually you're going to need to pack up your tent and go into town. And what do you do when you go into town? You shop. So American National Parks and the Keepers by Richard Seller, he shows a correlation between the people that like to visit these national parks and these national forests and people who have a nostalgic view on a simpler time, small town America, where you know your neighbors. And the surrounding communities from these national parks seem to have the perfect formula put together to get people there. And it works. The National Park Visitor Spending, an article titled The National Parks Visitor Spending Effects, posted by the National Park Service, credits that in 2007, Yellowstone alone had over 4 million families visit. And those 4 million families spent over $436 million. Again, that is in 1 year, just one park. But beyond the monetary profits, these parks help our environment so much, especially when it comes to animals. In Schaefer's article, U.S. National Park Buffer Zones, he shows how our state parks and national parks were set up to be safe zones for the animals living within them. This is because of all the poaching, all the hunting that takes place. This also, it's also kind of a weird change out because they do protect the animals, but some state parks actually have yearly hunting events for specific animals. So like the Huntsville State Park in Huntsville, Texas, actually has once a year they do squirrel hunting. And that's just because there's an overpopulation of the squirrels that are there, of course from tourists bringing their food. But this means that they're taking the berries and the food that's there for the other animals. So they found a way to more or less get rid of the squirrels. But aside from, these buffer zones also help the environment and the trees and the resources that are there in the state parks. They prevent against any kind of mining or drilling or any harvesting of the natural goods. So you're not going to go to a state park or national park and see an oil well. You're not going to see a coal mine or anything of that nature. And they also help give resources to the parks when they want to, when any kind of natural disaster happens. So in 2011, everyone knows that there was the Bastrop wildfires that wiped out a lot of the land there. In an article titled Bastrop County in the Lost Pines area, posted by the Bastrop Visitor Center, it actually says that they're still regenerating from those 2011 wildfires. my husband and I were lucky enough to go and visit at Bastrop, the Lost Pines, and we talked to one of the park rangers there, and he told us of all of the different things that they're doing to keep that from happening in the future. So they're actually teaching these trees to grow without catching fire, without spreading the fire as much as it did in 2011 to protect the park and the community around it. But as a result of these protection efforts, national and state parks are able to continue having a lasting impact on our country. They're able to continue to benefit our economy, our communities, and our environment. So whenever you're planning your next family outing, even just a weekend trip away, I strongly consider trying out a national or state park. Maybe even go to Garner State Park and hike up Old Baldy. Just don't forget your rock.